You just saw a movie, Milagro Beanfield War. What do we want to know from this movie? What are we looking for in this movie? Right off the bat, if you look at the movie, which we've been doing, I don't know if you felt it was worthwhile or not. You've got the title of the movie, which on first appearance looks like it's nothing. In fact, you say, oh, this movie is uninteresting, dull, silly title, and so on. But then you look closer at it, and you realize the person who created it, or produced it, or involved in it, had grander ideas. I told you some of those last time, the first time we met. Milagro. It wasn't necessary to call the movie by the name of Milagro, was it? Because if you know Spanish, which I'm not a great expert in, but some of you know pretty well, you'll know that Milagro is a religious idea, miracle. So miraculous. So already we're having the religious aspect of this movie coming into play, even in the title and the kind of words producer wanted to use, start to convey what his movie was about. Miraculous, miracle. It's a miracle. The next thing, beaners. I mean, often in an insulting way, people like to talk about others from different cultures, particularly south of the border here in the northern hemisphere, Americas. Beaners, because people were thought of as picking beans. And that was old California language from way, way, way back, stereotypical California language. Not just probably California, all across the Southwest, but particularly I think California because of the amount of agricultural industry they had in this state, and also the amount of labor they needed to harvest it. But you see, this becomes the central theme in the movie right from the title, Beanfield. What some people think of as pejorative or negative in the movie, in the title, I think is meant symbolically, actually in a positive way, wouldn't you say? And then once you realize it's taking a negative and turning it into a positive, what people think is the least attractive part of a certain historical, cultural background is turned into the most historical, or the most attractive part of a certain cultural historical background. Now, you wouldn't think that if you had seen a Hollywood movie come out in, when was it, like 1989 or 90 or something like that. You saw a movie called Milagro Beanfield War, you think, oh, it was something to do with the Central Valley and a lot of labor trouble or something like that. You wouldn't think that, it had to do with religion or religious symbolism or anything like that, would you? So I already told you when we started out with this movie what the Beanfield symbolism was. But just to make it more intense or deep in it, what was the Beanfield we implied when we started out with this?
Fertility.
I think we can see in the movie clearly that the implication is one of fertility. You remember here at the end of this movie that you just saw when everyone turns out and they're all picking the beans, and it's become almost a religious festival, and then suddenly everybody is kissing and embracing, and then pretty soon they're shooting their guns up in the air, and it's on a minor scale a very massive celebration of togetherness, unity, well-being, healthiness. Society is in its right balance or orientation, or its correct harmony. So that's what comes through. When the bean field is producing and everyone is cooperating to make the bean field produce, then happiness spreads out like waves. As I said, it's pretty much of a feel-good movie, isn't it? So it isn't really, I mean, we don't take this as realistic. Honestly, I don't think anything like this ever happened in the world, not at the time of Christ or at the time of Robert Redford. Forget Mel Gibson. I don't think nothing like this happened in real life, in real history. So I think this is, unfortunately, don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, closer to real history than the Gospels might be. But in any case, nothing like this occurred. I know a lot of you have feelings. We've always said in the teaching and in discussion in the world, if you, surest way you want to offend someone is talk politics and religion. Because why? Those are the things people feel, unfortunately, most deeply about. Why? I sometimes wonder, but that's it. Sure enough, you say something against someone's politics, you're going to get yourself into a nasty argument, if not worse. Could even end up in alienation and even actual physical struggle between you. You know, politics is a very divisive thing, but religion even more so. If you say something negative about someone's religious feeling or something that they feel affection for, regardless if it's justified or not, you're going to produce animosity, resentment, hostility, because the person immediately picks up on, oh, he's against me. What causes that? What causes that? In my personal feeling, and I'm the one talking at the moment, you can respond if you want, it's a kind of tribalism. It's sort of goes way deep into our species. Solidarity or tribalism with the cultural group. You know, you can have new cultural groups, you can have old cultural groups. I tend to, often in talking about things, spin off into areas that have nothing to do with what we were talking about, but are worth finishing up just because the thought started. A lot of people say, well, Eisenman, you're never going to get back to where you started. It's true, often I get out on a limb and then the limb gets sawed off and I have no idea where I began, but this one, hopefully, we will get back. And talking about solidarity, tribalism, and things, mostly your solidarity is with your country, is with your people, is with your religion, things like that. I mean, you may not even be a Muslim that you practice or anything like that, but if someone says something negative about Muslim, your back gets up. Christianity, obviously, also, Judaism also. I think Buddhists are less like that, although I'm not sure Confucians really care that much if you say something negative about them. But Shinto, Western religions particularly are aggressive in that regard and hypersensitive. People get, but you can have newer, what are our new allegiances? I mean, we don't, well, here we are, Cal State Long Beach. This becomes an allegiance group. All people who have been to Cal State Long Beach feel a certain connection to each other. Not as strong as some other places. Like if you went to USC, you'd really get a whiff of it. And it gets, the more, I think, dependent people are on that influence group, the deeper the bond and the fellow solidarity feeling is. I'm sure it operates really big time in places like Harvard, Yale. Why? Because they raise all kinds of money through it. Princeton. That's how they run their schools, through the allegiances these people feel and the payback. That's why all these Bush people go to Yale. Clintons try to get into it. Nouveau people like Clinton and others. I think they have what? They have one Yale person today running against another Yale person for president. Not only two Yale people, but also in the same secret honorary society, the Skull and Bones. So these are all groups that you get new loyalties to. Out here in California, there's not a lot of that, particularly in these state schools. Like, I mean, someone doesn't care if they went to Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Northridge, Los Angeles. There's a little snobism here and there, but it isn't a lot. Get into UC, it gets more, doesn't it? Start to talk about going to UC Berkeley or going to UCLA, as opposed to, let us say, going to UC Santa Cruz or Riverside. I mean, it's big time difference in the asabiya. The asabiya. It's an Arab word, but it means identity with a group, with a given tribe or a family grouping or some kind, the kind of feeling you have. The Arab historians of the Middle Ages said that the stronger the asabiya, the stronger the empire or the country. As the asabiya, the solidarity, group solidarity, I guess you'd call it, grew stronger, the group would get more powerful. Russia's a good example of that, isn't it? What happened since the fall of communism? The asabiya, the group solidarity, diminished, so that the place began to fall apart into different groups. Kazakhstan, Ukraine, different places like that. And then you get a terrible massacre on the edges of the asabiya belt because you're dealing with a place called Chechnya, who want to have their own place, and then they're fringes of the Russian heartland that are being affected by that, and then you get 400 people killed and 250 children probably massacred or maimed. And the thing gets very intense. Is it going to fall apart, or are they going to recoup? Everything will depend on the group solidarity at that point. That's what will determine which way the country will go. So there's a good case of solidarity in flux. Here, California, really, what is the normal solidarity besides Cal State, Long Beach, or the Los Angeles Lakers? Everyone, hey, Lakers, right? So the very fact you go into a bar, and, Shaq, someone, Kobe, you have groups of solidarity as opposed to someone living in Dunkyville. They're like, for instance, what, Minnesota Timberwolves? I mean, who are they? To us, nothing. So therefore we are opposed to them just on the basis of our allegiance to these units or figures or cultural magnet centers. Of course, Kobe has done his best to deconstruct the Lakers so that the asabiya for the Lakers this year is going to collapse momentously as people see the individuals out on the court who they don't even recognize. And all the best people they used to have besides him have been, shunted off into the, hinterland somewhere. So obviously that's broken. But normally, let's give Southern California or where we live here as an example. You know what I think that maybe that's so, but I think one of the big solidarity points is the high school. The high school. What you did in high school, who you knew in high school, what high school you went to, and if you went to one little town as opposed to another little town, all the colors of that high school stick in your mind as opposed to the colors of the other high school. You have immediate allegiance to those colors as opposed to the people who went to a different color high school. someone went to Long Beach Poly, or someone went to modern day, let's say some people have green and yellow allegiances, the others will have red and gray allegiances, and just stick in their psyche. It's really ridiculous. But that's how stupid mankind is. And it's totally absurd. Little things that have no consequence dominate your loyalty framework. And so I think in Southern California, I may be one of the most important things. And I think across the whole of America, as far as the Appalachians, from here to the Appalachians, and maybe even further, it's the high school. If you go to Kansas or Iowa or West Texas or something like that, people just turn out on the weekends to go to the high school games or something like that, and that is the only event in town. That's what the allegiance is. And here in Southern California, it still exists in the suburban areas anyway, if not the downtown metropolitan area. So, okay, I think that defines what I was talking about. Just to go back then to my original comment. Anyone want to add something to that, by the way? Anyone want to throw their view, any input there they want to contribute? Just to go back to my original comment, if I say something about someone's religion, for instance, I said, I didn't think that movie was very realistic, so it was a nice, pleasant movie, and it made us feel good, didn't it? And it's a good feel-good movie. But I said I didn't think it was very realistic, but then I said I think it's actually even probably more realistic than something like the Gospels, which I think are totally unrealistic in terms of the history of that period. And you say, oh my God, he said something, he's insulted me. You see, there you go. The moment anyone says anything about your Asabia group, your hackles get up. All I do is pray your indulgence for these things. Because if a professor, a lecturer, male, female, whatever person you're encountering has to worry all the time about your sensibilities, there really can't be any progress in challenging people intellectually or learning. So a throwaway comment like that, I say, oh, why'd you say that? Well, because I said the movie wasn't realistic and it was a religious movie, so I was just trying to compare it to some other things that I didn't think were realistic. I could have taken Greek tragedy, Oedipus at Colonus or something like that, but it wouldn't have made the same impression. The gospel is something that we're all familiar with, and we've had recent movies about that too. So that's why, to show you that you want to evaluate things, all things equally. Ancient and modern things should be, I think, evaluated equally. So one of the things about people, another, I think, funny thing about people, is that they're prepared to accept in the past what they wouldn't accept in the present. So for instance, something happened 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 3,000, or was said to have happened, a lot of people say, oh yeah, that happened. But if they saw the same thing happen down the street today, or someone told them the same thing happened down the street today, they wouldn't accept it. In fact, they would think the person speaking to them about that given thing was ready for the loony bin. So people you will put into the loony bin today, yesterday you'll be in total awe. I don't want to give any examples, but I think you know what I mean. Well, I'll give you one. If I were to tell you, oh, by the way, you know Jimmy Boy down on Baker Street, he just turned water into wine. I mean, you would look at me like I was a lunatic and that I deserved to be put on the way. And if a person came down and you were in one of the cafeterias there and they came up to you, you know, on the way to school I saw an exorcism. Or I saw, you know, there was a tie-up on the freeway and some guy was taking swine and getting the evil spirit out of them and running them off a hillside. I mean, you think, this guy, I got to get away from this guy. You know, he's coming on to me too strong. That's what I mean to say about realism and non-realism. These are good elements, and they may be attractive in terms of making the thing more attractive and more impressive. But they may not be historical elements. They may not be realistic elements. It took me 30 years to understand that. because for 30 years I tried to sort of deal with some of those things in different religious documents. I remember I traveled all the way to India, hitchhiked to India back in the early 60s, before all the hippies got there. And the first thing I did was take my glasses off and throw it into the Bay of Bombay. Because I said to myself, I don't need glasses anymore. God will see for me. And my eyes are going to get strengthened because of my great faith. And, I've done all this, I've achieved all this, I got all the way to India on the road, I didn't get killed or anything like that. Now I don't need these glasses. I don't need to be four eyes anymore. Of course, you can get an operation and get your retina cut and everything and it'll all be fixed up or different things like that. But, or you can get contact lenses or stuff like that. So it annoyed me to have these glasses on constantly. Well, guess what happened? I blundered around India for about 2 months, blind as a bat, and then my eyes only got worse. Now that's not a very inspiring story, is it? It'd be much more inspiring if I threw the glasses in the Bay of Bombay, and after that, miraculously, I could see everything, wouldn't it? But I just give that as a story of maybe say, well, you weren't enough of a man of faith, Professor Eisenman. That may be one way of looking at it. On the other hand, I think actually what I told you is the stuff of truth, unfortunately. I mean, day-to-day truth, not daily religious truth. The other thing are the embellishments of art. What the art or the storyteller does to increase the impressiveness of a certain presentation. And it took me 30 years to realize that, in fact, I had to approach these things differently because these things didn't happen in my life. Things that were being written about, they weren't happening. They weren't happening. And so I had to make a distinction between religious documents and real events. Most people do it really early in life, but I was a child in that case. Anyway, let's get back to where we were about this movie and its somewhat childish aspects to it, its feel-good aspects, its lack of realism. I did want to say one more thing about this asabiya, or this solidarity. The thing that causes, I think, resentment is just this tribal feeling that people have, that this attachment that they get to something that is deeper and not really understandable. Their parents, their ancestors, what their parents represented, what the culture their parents inherited, what their parents then transmitted to you, or to us, or to me. These are the things, as I say, that if someone says the least thing touching upon it that sounds like it's challenging or negative, resentment, other things bubble up. So there's something we have to kind of struggle, and I don't think we have to do as much in this class. I have other classes that's much more important. But in this particular movie, what is the cultural ambiance that defines the solidarity? Well, it's this village. It's this village and the loyalty that these people feel to this village. And then, as I said, the bean field as a symbol of the fertility of the culture and the society of that village. So, for instance, when the beans are growing and the water is flowing and everything is in harmony, then everyone loves each other. So at the end of the movie, everybody's kissing, everybody is happy, all the relationships are being consolidated because everything is fertile, and you get this whole idea of the fertility of the society depending on the fertility of the ground. I think this is an old religious idea going back, certainly in the Southwest, but almost everywhere around the world, to shamans, religious figures who had some effect on the land. What's a shaman? A shaman is a kind of charismatic religious figure. he or she doesn't really have to be a member of a specific religion as such. He's just a she's just a charismatic figure that arises out of a cultural group that people focus on as having insight, or their well-being spreads out into the culture's well-being. I'm not sure if we have a shaman in this movie. We have a weird assortment of shamanesque figures. The woman who's running the protest campaigns, the bean field cultivator, though he doesn't really inspire a lot of spiritual awe, does he? It's really, I guess, the two old men are the most curious, religiously involved figures in the movie. The two old men with whom the movie begins and ends.
Also the sheriff brings peace and
He's a piece of the sheriff. Yeah, he's probably the strongest, though he doesn't get much of a role in the movie.
but he keeps it down.
Yeah, he
He has control.
He does, and he finally signs the petition and demonstrates his solidarity with the whole cultural group. That's a good point, thank you. What about the two old men, though? What were their names? Well, Amarante is one. Do you remember, I don't know do you remember what the other guys? I don't know if I can spell these things. Any Spanish background people will tell me if I've spelled it right. What's the other guy's name? Do you recall? Huh?
Coyote Angel.
Who's the spirit guy that he's talking to, that Amarante's talking to?
Is he called Coyote Angel?
Coyote, was he? Anyone else know? Noel, do you remember who that spirit guy is?
I don't think they name him. But
I don't name him?
I don't think so.
Well, he's somebody's ancestor, isn't he? Who? Joe. He's Joe's dad? Or grandfather? Dad, huh? Hey, you guys are doing good. Okay, so the spirit world, the ancestor. Joe has to live up to the ancestor. Again, this cultural fellow feeling solidarity, outside be it if you want. Joe doesn't even know what's operating. He's like a blind man, punching around in the world, trying to find his way. And meanwhile, these ancestors or others are like sort of playing with him like Greek gods, huh? But they're also, I think, they have another aspect to their character. Certainly the ancestor is like an angel figure. They're presenting him as angelic, right? So I think both of them are sort of like angels. And finally, not so much Amarante, but the other one, the ancestor guy, the angel sort of ancestor. He's mischievous too, isn't he? He likes to cause trouble. He dances. He's sort of like a spooky, dancing, trouble-causing spirit. Well, in the Southwest, they have a name for that spirit deity. And you see it if you travel through the Arizona, New Mexico heartland. They have little stands. They sell him all the time. It's an American Indian cultural icon. What do they call him? I think if I can spell it right. Let's spell something like that. Cocopelli. I mean, that's what we gringos know about this stuff. I mean, we're not terribly, how should we put it, conversant in these cultural symbols and the whole heritage behind them, because we don't know the literature and we don't know the oral tradition so well. I'm not sure the people in these regions know it so well. But if you look on all their pottery, on their jewelry, on what they sell to tourists, on the mugs, coffee mugs that they sell on roadside stands, or magnets, or any kind of thing like most often you'll see this Cocopelli figure represented in one way or another. I have some figurines, I've got to bring them in, maybe I'll do it another day, of this Cocopelli. Yeah.
We're speaking of the Alsabian
I want to keep on with the Cocopelli first. I'll get back to that, okay?
Okay.
Let me stick with the Cocopelli, and then we'll go, just hold that one, all right? But it'll go, all right, we've done it, give it to me quick.
What is this, you were speaking of the human nature, so what is it about the human nature in the Alsabian that turns negative towards somebody in a different Alsabian? Why is it more?
I think it's the tribal, I think even, and you go back to even prehistoric man, Neanderthals versus Cro-Magnons, and you go back into even the people don't like evolution for various reasons, some don't. I like monkeys and chimps and gorillas and creatures like that. I mean, they're very attractive.
Just because they're different, why do they have to be wrong?
But if you look at even in those groups, they fight each other too. There are bands of chimpanzees that are extremely warlike with each other, that actually, if they attack another band, will wipe it all out. These are usually, I think, kinship bands based on the same kinship. You go even into, I mean, again, I'm going way back here. If you even look at those prides of lions and things, I don't know, they've had a lot of movies on the nature channels and the Discovery Channel, all those, the Animal Channel, whatever the different channels they have, they fill up with stuff. Well, there recently has come out that, you know, you get roaming prides of male lions that look for other prides, and then because they want to mate with the females in those prides, before they can do that, they got to kill off the big or run off the dominant male lion or whatever it is that's bossing this particular pride. And then what do? So the females will mate with them. They kill all of the young. So well, why would the females mate with them if they've just killed all their young? Well, you tell me, you're female or male. I don't know what the atavistic reason for that is, but the physiological reason is quite simple. The woman doesn't come into sexual activity while she's feeding young. I guess she's not ovulating or whatever the words that describe the situation. And those animals sense it. They know that. They're not going to get any reaction out of these females until they get rid of the offspring of the other males. So anyway, coming back to what you're talking about, I think in the chimpanzee bands that we watch, they actually use weapons with each other. They have sticks and clubs and things like that, stones and things, and they actually wipe each other out when they make war on each other for various reasons, either geographical or female hunting. I don't know what their encouragement is. So coming to more recent humans, I think that the tribe was the solidarity with the tribe as opposed to other tribes that causes this conflict. I don't have any deeper answer than that. You'd have to think of it yourself, because I'm not an expert any more than you might be, and I'm sure you can come up with a better answer. That's the start of an answer that I have. Whenever I see people resent what another person is doing on the basis of that's my religion, that's your religion, and that person isn't even practicing their religion much, just get angry just because you've infringed on their culture sphere, to me that's basically tribalism. And it's not wrong. I'm a tribal person. You're a tribal person. We all have our tribal loyalties, and you can't get away with them. And to deny them, that might turn you into a wimp. I mean, to have strong identities. I don't dislike all those USC people. I mean, I don't know what they're all getting all worked up about. It's just an economic thing that they're working into so they can get a network of some kind and maybe get a better job somewhere. That's all it's about. And then all the losers who buy into it too. So there's maybe 30%, 25% people who are functioning and 75%, dodos who are, hooking onto it and are just losers. And that's the only thing that they got going for them. So I understand that. I don't hate them or not hate them for it. But I think people should have strong tribal identities, but they should also realize that their reactions are sometimes based on that, and they should try to cool it if you're in an intellectual environment, that's all. But to go back to Kokopelli, can anyone tell me about this Kokopelli figure? Well, from what I know about Kokopelli, the old man in this movie, the spirit being, has a lot in common with him, except he doesn't really look much like the way he's represented in the different statues or art, you know, the jewelry or the figurization you get on pottery and other places this representational art takes place. He is a nature spirit who has to do with the fertility of the land, which is what we're seeing in this movie too. I think this figure has got overtones of Christian angels mixed with Native American Kokopelli type nature spirits in this figure. And the main thing about Kokopelli is he seems to be, he likes to play tricks on people. He's a kind of a bit of a wise guy. He's a trickster. And we're going to see the same thing when we do, what's the name of that book? Conversations with Don Juan or whatever? Well, what's the name of that other book that you're looking at there?
The Teachings of Don Juan.
Teachings of Don Juan. You know, Don Juan's going to be pretty much of a wise guy. And then when this guy finally meets, what's the name for the deity that he meets in that one? You know what do you call him?
Mescalito.
Mescalito? Yeah, Mescalito. When he finally meets Mescalito, Mescalito's going to be a real trickster. And that may have something to do with the kind of drugs people, because he, in that book, is taking drugs. Not modern sort of commercial drugs, but Native American plant root sort of drugs taken out of the different, you know, vegetables, shall we say, materials that you can extract such things often from. I think probably a lot of this shamanesque sort of religious feeling based upon central medicine men type characters often had to do with drug-induced conscious states, whether trances or just highs or whatever. So that when people did get in that state, apparently a lot of tricksterish sort of thing often may be developed. And that's why I think it's sometimes portrayed as a prankster or practical joker. Although, as we see, the physical force of the universe, nature, is sort of like a practical joker too. Look at the hurricanes in Florida just now. I mean, that was so boring. I mean, I couldn't even turn on the TV for 5 days without seeing some guy under a tree with wind blowing. And these people, these journalists, I mean, why don't they give it up? I mean, they could have had 5 minutes of this wind and sailboats crashing up and down on each other occasionally. But they had like 24-hour coverage, wall to wall. They're so useless. I mean, give them something to run with, and that's all they'll run over and over, because they don't have any, you say, why? They don't need brain. The easiest thing to do is cover a murder. What's that trial going on in Northern California? You hear ad nauseum. What's that one? Who cares about those people? All I feel bad for the young lady who got chucked into the San Francisco Bay. I mean, jeepers. But what? Now we have to rivet on this guy for 8 months? Non-stop coverage with every expert. This is just exploitation of you and me, unfortunately. The same with these storms. They think we're idiots, which I guess we are. And they feel that our attention span is so limited that all that they can do is hook us with is something like that, or the Kobe Bryant case, or a hurricane. But they don't really want to tell us what's going on in, you know, Kazakhstan. They don't want to tell us anything about the Congo. I mean, they don't want to tell us real news. what's actually going on in the universe. They just want to tell us this kind of, you know, tabloid stuff. It's really sad. If I was a journalist, I think I would shoot myself. I mean, it's the most, I don't want to hope none of you are in the journalism department here. Don't tell me if you are, but it's become one of the, it's not much different than a call girl in industry, to be honest. It's about on the same level. And you can take that to the powers that be and say someone said that, but it's really sad. And it's really a form of prostitution, and I'm not against prostitutes, I'm nothing against them. In fact, prostitutes are probably more honest. But gay or female, I'm not trying to be showy. Anyway, to get back to, now that one I don't know how we got off on. There I saw it off. Anyway, let's get your view of this movie. Any other things? I've spoken about Cocopelli, and I think he runs through this thing. And I think that angel-like figure who's trying to play the tricks is a representation of him to some extent. What are a few tricks that he plays there? Do you know? I think he gets the guy to jump in the tractor or something, and doesn't he get the? I mean, he's working through Amarante kind of, isn't he? And then there's the pig gets loose or something like that, and the tractor goes absolutely bonkers, and all kinds of odd. The wind comes up and blows all the leaflets all over. So there's lots of little tricks.
I thought that the spirit has something to do with death. So here, Ryan sees Amarante and he says, "I'm relaxed and I'm here for you. It's your city. It's your town." So I thought he had something to do with death.
Well, he's already dead, that guy. So I mean, in effect, he does have something to do with death. You're right, but he's not. He's saving everyone, it seems.
Yeah.
But the death circle, yeah.
The best example I thought was when when the guy was trying to burn the newspapers, and then all of a sudden the wind came up and all the newspapers were spread across the town.
Right.
And then united the town in the
In this
single
movement,
goal of
yeah,
this
of
movie.
getting the bean field fertile and getting rid of the exploiters. There's the ecological theme here. The developers who are going to ruin the ecology of the land and destroy the solidarity of the community, the tribe, the village, and so on, with their high wages or tourist attraction and so on. So you get all that. There's everything. There's a lot in this movie, even though you think it's nothing. And I think people who made it are very clever because they made it very entertaining. You know, people enjoyed it. It was fun. When I came back here, and you guys were still laughing at even the corniest jokes. The guy falls and trips into the stream, and you all laugh. You know, it's like someone slipping on a banana peel. You know? But it produced the effect. You were all laughing. But I think that's one of the main interventions that take place in this thing. But they're intervening from the get-go. I don't think it's so much about death because they save Amarante in the end anyway, and he's still poking around by the end of it. He's no worse off at the end than he is at the beginning. So I'm not sure that death is coming. Death is involved. But anyway,
Yeah, because at the end, I thought it could be that Amarante was dying because he takes him and says, come with me, I know a shortcut.
oh yeah, maybe you think they're leaving at that point. Yeah, maybe he is going off. Although he just got saved, so it's a little hard for me to believe it. Anyway, just a movie. I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah, the part where he says, "I know the shortcut." You see the little, you see the tractor marks from when the tractor went through the gate and then on down towards the hill, like as if they're coming down and then jumping back over, as if they're going towards the bean field where they began at. So I don't know. If, I mean, it could have been a symbolism. Of
Yeah, I don't think I didn't get the feeling
there.
that he was on his way to dying. I think they were.
I thought they were just going on their way
going
back
off
to
to
the
their
thing.
own,
Yeah.
to playing games, some more game playing. And I'll get you one thing that came through as I recall in this movie, and I didn't watch it with you this time, I've seen it so often. The fact the old people are talking there, you know, blah, 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 and the guy's talking to himself. I mean, many people have families where there are older people and young people who look at these older people, they think they're talking to themselves. And they get a kind of mystical air about them because they're in another world. I think they portrayed that really well. The feeling that these old people are actually, it isn't just mumbo jumbo that they're talking. They're actually in another universe of some kind. and it has a religious aspect to it. Oh, that was good, yeah.
Well, I kind of got the same sense that she got, because I think he's like, well, I'm going to teach you music to the natural music, and then they run along. And I mean, just, they usually say that when old people say that you start seeing people that are dead before you actually die, in the sense that,
Oh, I hope not. I must be close.
No, I mean, then he just pops out and just starts speaking again. But in the same sense, he wants to make his presence known by his son regrowing his beard.
Well, I mean, look, that's the whole point about this. This is just a movie. Some scriptwriter did it. We're just the beneficiaries, audience of it. Anyone's interpretation is really as good as anyone else's. There's no final truth in this. So you say, well, what are we looking for here? Your reaction to it when we come and ask you to write about it. You know, we would just ask you to discuss certain things in this movie, religious themes and symbols and things like that. And we'll expect you to try to hold forth in your own way what they mean. And Noel will read it, won't you, Noel?
Yes.
And basically, there's no right or wrong, is there? Just that you present an idea and express it well, right? So what I'd like to do next time is I'd like to do some more talking about this. I'd like to try to get a little deeper into the nature symbolism, get the mixture of Southwest Indian with Christianity themes, a little more about the students from the East and things like that. And then we'll look at, what's his name, Colin Castaneda. See if I can turn that off.